Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast, your black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage, and of course, all things NFL, as it is that time of the year. My name's Joe Kuzma, and I am joined by Brian E. Roach. And Brian, what's going on, man?
Joseph, I am not Brian. As you've mentioned, I am your mother.
Oh, dear. Well, maybe this might actually work. I was going to tell you, Brian's mother, Mrs. Roach, I hope you're having a very good day. I was thinking of, like, we almost need to get, like, a trio on the show because I didn't think up of any buddy comparisons for today's episode, but I did think up of the Three Stooges and how well we would all fit into that. And just based on what you've just done here, this isn't really Brian's mother. It is Brian. He is a stooge. Nyok, nyok. What's going on? What's up, Brian?
It's not snowing today. It's beautiful.
It's turning on and off and on, off and on, and you know it's annoying. It's we're talking about, you know, that I said right before we started to hit the record button for this that you said something my mother would say, and another one of my mom-isms as I was speaking to Mrs. Roach just moments ago. You're not heating the outdoors, and I feel that's the way that Mother Nature is right now. Just keeps opening the door, closing the door. You know, it's going to snow for 5 minutes here. Coat, you know, your back deck for me, and the stairs walking up, just enough to be annoying and maybe slip and break your neck. And then you know what? The sun's going to come out. It'd be a lovely day. It's just crazy, man. It's just, I'm waiting for Geostorm to come. Not the movie. Who cares about that movie? But the actual Geostorm. Oh, by the way, Brian, I know I'm rambling. I finally got to see Black Panther, my friend. Finally.
Awesome.
Yes, about time. So wife jerked me out to 50 Shades a few weeks ago. I had to wait. I got my window of opportunity. We haven't talked since. I went right after the last episode. I hope everyone enjoyed Mike Palaya and his interview that he had regarding free agency. We're going to talk about free agency today, actually. So, yes, the Marvel movies never disappoint. It almost seems like too much of a good thing. I finally caught Justice League, too. It took me forever. And it's almost like, and it's none of these movies are bad, but it's like you almost, like I see so much of it that you get desensitized to it. And that's such a great correlation to free agency, because the Pittsburgh Steelers, if we had a show about what they're doing in free agency this year, we would say sayonara, adios, goodbye, everybody.
We're done.
Yes, because they have done nothing. So, we're going to talk about everybody else, but the Steelers did make some moves in the negative way. They have dropped some players from their roster, and it looks like we're going to have a new look secondary for 2018.
Yeah, you say negative, while I think that there's a good portion of Steelers Nation that will agree that we had some negative moves. There's a good portion of Steelers Nation that is rejoicing at these moves. I am not one of them. I mean, I get it. I understand the business side of this, and I'm not a Mike Mitchell hater. He's the top of the list here. But, you know, it is possible and not even really questionable that they could use an upgrade at that safety position. Robert Golden, also sayonara, see you later, Bobby. And who was he? Oh, Will Gay.
Yeah, William Gay.
William Gay, who for what he was, stuck around and had a pretty darn decent career for himself, you know, between Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh Southeast or Southwest or whatever the heck they are over there.
Yeah, he believe he was tied with Rod Woodson for pick sixes, return for touchdowns. So that considering most people were not happy or thrilled with Will Gay at various points of his career, I'd say it was a pretty solid career if you're on the franchise record books in one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, it's pretty clear that there were issues in the secondary last year, and it felt like, you know, the corners got a lot of blame for certain things that we had talked about it throughout the year, that the safeties actually let them down on. And it did oftentimes feel like maybe Mike Mitchell was part of that issue. But to be fair to the guy, he's been hurt for several years, and as you age, and those injuries, especially groin injuries, it's going to start to wear down on you, and he could have lost a step. It's unfortunate, and it is still possible. I know the Steelers have said they leave the door open to bringing Mitchell back at a more team-friendly deal, but based on his taunting of the Honey Badger earlier today on Twitter, I kind of feel like Mike just wants to get a deal done someplace, and he's waiting for Matthews to sign.
Yeah, Tyrann Matthews at the top of everybody's wish list, especially the Steelers. And it's funny you mentioned him. I guess I'll jump into this real quick for a second. Is the Steelers have absolutely no cap space, and unless they could do something with Le'Veon Bell that reduces what that tag number is, they got to be under a cap number. I don't know. That may even be deadline of today, tomorrow. It's all these 4 p.m. Eastern deadlines at this time of the year that are on the calendar. I can't remember which one it was, but they have to have, they just can't have X amount over the cap or whatever. So that's why they've been restructuring deals, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Matthew, there's some guys, the real taunting is there with Mike Mitchell. He was saying, hey, get something done so the rest of us safeties can get a job. So,
yeah, exactly.
But on the other hand, you have guys like Cam Hayward just adding them, the mentioning them by their handle on Twitter directly, hey, what's up, and things like that, really, really teasing me here. And it's funny because a lot of the same guys, some of these players are discussing, what Lev Bell's worth and pay the man, and you get the fans that do the same thing too. And when you pay the man, when you pay Ben, when you pay AB, when you pay Bell, it doesn't leave you a whole lot left to pay much of anybody else. Now, I do have something interesting to say. Now, Tyrann Mathieu, top of my list, probably even more of a want than Eric Weddle was a few years ago, because I thought Weddle was getting up in age, but still a difference maker. Mathieu is probably entering the prime of his career, provided he stays healthy. He'd be at the top of my want list. But I heard something real interesting on the Bell front. And this was Charlie Casserly, a former general manager. He's an NFL Network guy now. And they had him patched in during this free agency frenzy thing they've been doing during the week. And I thought this was really interesting, Brian. It's something we didn't actually talk about. And it was, forget about the running back market. What is Le'Veon Bell, the player, worth as a playmaker on your team? I think as a locker room, he says, you want to take care of the guys who are taking care of, your team, the core of your team. So you pay those guys what they're worth. So in that kind of aspect, I tend to see his point, because when you have a Marquise Pouncey at center and you're paying him a lot of money, do you compare that with other centers? Do you compare other defensive ends with a Cam Hayward contract, or any type of comparisons like that? I don't know. It gave me a different perspective on it. And I kind of wanted to see what you thought, because I said, you know what? He makes sense. Maybe Bell is worth what he's tagged at. I would like if they could bonus some of this and make it a lower average and cap hit number, so they could try and make some other maneuvers. But, as it stands, and I'm not going to rehash everything we talked about, I thought Charlie made a pretty good point there.
Well, I'm going to take that point, and I'm going to address it as the devil's advocate. You pay the guys who are important in your locker room. You pay the guys who are leaders in your locker room. For example, Antonio Brown, who shows up regardless of whether he has a contract or not, who doesn't cause a problem, who comes into camp and shows up for all the OTAs and goes to things that he isn't even required to do, who obviously works his butt off constantly, or someone like Cam Hayward, who does the exact same types of things, who's with the team, who's obviously team-centered. Pouncey, same way. Those are guys you pay for that specific reason. Then flip that around and see what Le'Veon Bell does.
No, I'm with you. I'm totally with you on that.
I as I've said many times, Le'Veon gets the lean for me and the benefit of the doubt because my daughter loves him. And
it's the only reason.
Well, it at this point maybe it is, but he is a dynamic player. He's a great running back. He's a key element of the offense. But this spoiled child act is really wearing thin on me.
Yeah, it is. You know what else gets a pass because my daughter loves it? Cotton candy. Yeah, not a big fan of cotton candy either. Le'Veon Bell, cotton candy, both testing my patience. So we were talking about the secondary. I want to come back to something for a second, because if I didn't put it in writing, or if I didn't say it aloud, I don't want to be called a liar later on. And and I know you could vouch for this, and I don't know that I've said it publicly, but it was one of the first things I thought about this offseason was whether or not, if Mike Mitchell were released. I think this was when Eric was doing the initial cap casualties idea as the season ended, like the very first week, middle to end of January, and Mike Mitchell's name came up. I said, I wonder if Sean Davis can move to free safety. And I pitched that in our, quote, back rooms that we have, where we all talk in secret. And and I don't know that I ever put that out there, but it is a fleeting thought, because J.J. Wilcox is still on the roster. And the thought, and this was me, you, Eric, Zach Meckler, a few others discussing, Wilcox in Mike Mitchell's spot, probably not. You're going to get what Mike Mitchell was, or you could be worse. It's not going to be an improvement. But we're kind of thinking about Sean Davis, and he regressed a little in year 2. And, a lot of players have sophomore slumps, and I think he has a promising future ahead. But when he was drafted, everyone's like, what position is he going to play? Because he kind of plays like everything. Well, can he play free safety? Can he slide over and maybe Wilcox play the strong safety? Or maybe the versatility of a Sean Davis allows the Steelers to not, what would you say, pigeonhole themselves into a particular prototype of safety in the NFL draft. Because now I'm starting let's put it this way. Rob Golden's gone, Mike Mitchell's gone, and then your dimebacker, who was Will Gay, is gone. The Steelers are going to draft a safety. It's just a matter of when. And this could be the top need now. If they don't do anything in free agency, that is, Honey Badger, I really have my serious doubts because of the type of contract. But he says he wants to play for a team with a good football culture. That would be Pittsburgh, and he would be willing not to accept something less than top dollar to play on a better team. So I'm not gonna rule that completely out, but I think it's kind of a tease. But could Sean Davis play free safety? I think when he came in, he was the nickelback guy because Artie Burns wasn't the starter yet, and Will Gay was playing away from that nickel, not the band Nickelback, but the slot corner position now occupied by Mike Hilton, and then eventually Davis went over, became the starter, and he kicked Robert Golden back, and he kicked Mike Mitchell back, and now there's no depth, and there's no guys to start, but I do think he may be versatile enough to allow the team to pursue best player available, actually, even though they do have a few needs, but the best guy in the draft.
Yeah, I think the biggest key here is, you mentioned how Davis played the nickel early on. Just remember that it didn't go well. He struggled at that position early on in the season. He came into his own when he went back to being a safety purely and didn't have to, and they simplified things for him. My biggest concern with Sean Davis moving to, free safety is that it's a different position. And while safety, there's some similarities that cross over, the mentality is much different. And I worry that some of the mistakes that Mike Mitchell was making in blown coverages and taking bad angles also could be issues with Sean Davis, especially because it's no longer a position he's played for a period of years. But do I think he has the ability to do it? Probably. He's young. He's talented. He's got better range. He can be a thumper when he needs to be. Do I think he can do it? Yes, I think he can. And I think that what will eventually decide that is where, what's available to them at the spots where they're drafting. If at 28, a prime safety is available, but he's going to be the same guy Mike Mitchell has been the last 2 years, then, maybe making the decision to say Mike Mitchell, or not Mike Mitchell, I keep saying Mike Mitchell, Sean Davis, he's going to be the player Sean Davis has been the last 2 years, then maybe moving Sean Davis over to take Mike Mitchell's spot and getting this guy in here provides the kind of safety net that they want. But on the other side, if it's a guy who's a true free safety, who's a center fielder, which is what they really need back there, they still have that ability as well. So I think that's exactly right when you said it doesn't pigeonhole them. Having that flexibility to potentially move him. And while I'm not really suggesting that I think they should, I think that it does allow them to be a little more open-minded with what could be around when they pick, because Safeties have been hot topics. Some of them, we talked about Justin Reed a lot in our back rooms, and Zach Meckler has been, a huge fan of Justin Reed since very, very, very early on. Well, now he's getting a lot of notoriety because he had a great combine. And while he could have been maybe a target for the Steelers, he may go earlier than that. He may be gone, within the top 20 picks now. So you just don't know. And so many things are going to depend on just who slides and who doesn't. But I think having that position flexibility is a good thing.
Yeah, and it's not like they haven't looked at safeties over the past few years. You had Budda Baker last year, Obi Melanofu, Carl Joseph. I'm trying to think. Landon Collins, who ended up being a fantastic player for the Giants. Keanu Neal. So these guys, they went. The Steelers drafting lower in the rounds never had a shot at any of these players. And they fit a certain type of prototype. And we talked about money backers. They kind of have Will Gay doing that. And he's not going to be around anymore. So I wonder who's going to fill that role. If that's going to be maybe Brian Allen, who's a bigger-bodied corner, maybe playing as that fourth DB in the dime packages. I could definitely see Mike Hilton's not going anywhere. Maybe Cam Sutton might do it too. I see Cam Sutton as much of the same kind of player. I don't know, maybe the same kind of mold as like Mike Hilton or something. But that'll be interesting to see. There's still a lot of holes that they're going to fill here, and the Steelers are going to be patient. I mean, even if they don't sign anybody through the rest of this week or weekend, I could see it going into next week. There's going to be players without a home that now they know what their true value is, and it's not maybe what they were originally asking for, and teams were passing, or they weren't maybe the first tier or two of the top free agents of their class. And those are the kind of guys like, last year it was Justin Hunter and somebody else is escaping my mind right now that they added to the roster. Oh, Alualu. Tyson Alualu, and guys of that nature. So here's one more that, we were talking about the Honey Badger and we're talking about the whole secondary. And this was something else that I had said. Now, this one I did put out public because it was something I was actually talking to my cousins about, and it had to do with Shazier. And no, not moving him to safety. That's not going to work and fix all the things we just talked about, but an actual linebacker. And I went and I looked up Lawrence Timmons' contract with the Dolphins. I said, you know what? He's a prime candidate to get cut. He showed up at the Steelers facility they had a practice. He went MIA from MIA down in Miami. Showed up in Pittsburgh like the first week of the season, and that also too there was the hurricane or the weather and the storms and that. So Miami's game got pushed back. They didn't even have a bye week. They played 16 straight weeks last year, as did Tampa Bay, and Timmons shows up out of nowhere, and it was like he's homesick, and he's still got all these things going on. I think he's still a prime candidate to come back, but here's the thing. When Aditi Kikawala said this, and she's been pretty salty lately. She's had some sass to her tweets, and Aditi said something that this would have to be discussed and worked out with Mike Tomlin. Well, of course, discussed and worked out was we did not keep you the first time, but now we're willing to bring you back, but maybe for not as much money. But I don't see there being a huge market for Lawrence Timmons to begin with, and this is another situation that maybe if you want to stick around and play in the NFL in some capacity, you're going to have to come back at not only a reduced cost or reduced role. I think the thing that's really going to hinge on that is being a former teammate of James Harrison's and seeing how Harrison left is if you draft somebody, what exactly is it that I'm going to be doing in that interim? And I guess it really depends on who they draft and how they play. A lot of people say, no, Timmons, old, gone, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, him and Vince Williams, they play the same position. What does this mean for Vince Williams? Well, Vince Williams was a backup and played in Ryan Shazier's spot quite a bit, too. He is not Ryan Shazier, but I think there's enough versatility there with Vince Williams that, again, if you want to add depth and a veteran and somebody who's a proven talent with the Pittsburgh Steelers and their defense, Lawrence Timmons is someone that they should at least be in contact with. It'll be interesting to see what happens now that he was released by the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, you and I both have said this. I know I talked to Zach about it on a podcast past, and I agree. And while I do agree that they have to work things out, remember, it's not that they didn't want Lawrence Timmons to stay. They offered him essentially the exact same contract Miami did. Miami.
Miami. I think that's the Will Smith song.
Yeah, they essentially offered him the exact same money as Miami did. The only difference was Miami guaranteed it, and the Steelers don't do that. So he went to where the money was guaranteed. And I think very quickly regretted the decision. And that's not unique amongst Steelers players when they leave and think the grass is greener elsewhere and have a desire to come back. We've seen it over and over again. Remember, this was Mike Tomlin's first pick ever, Lawrence Timmons, with the Steelers. This is the guy that was his initial, pick for the Steelers as the head coach. And I think, this is his guy. I think, yes, they have to talk. They have to see what it's like. But, in 14 games last year, Timmons had 58 tackles and, 26 assists. So, it's not like he's completely off the radar. Yes, he's another year a little bit slower. Part of the reason they didn't give him more money to keep him was he's become more of a liability in coverage. But you're absolutely right. Vince Williams used to sub for Ryan Shazier, and Timmons was the guy on the other side of that pairing. So he knows the defense inside and out, which eliminates communication problems. He's got a great relationship as far as anybody knows with the rest of the team. I see no real issue unless something completely unknown to us externally was at the root of all this nonsense in Miami. My gut tells me it was just the fact that he was like, I can't believe I made this mistake. But who knows? Maybe he got a little wacky, and they don't need the wackiness coming back. But I like the idea.
I don't know. Maybe he missed getting a Permani sandwich or something. It's possible. Actually, they have them all over Florida, the snowbird thing and people retiring and moving and bringing their heritage and their culture back with them as they retire to much warmer climates than what we've been dealing with. But yeah, Timmons turns 32 on May 14th. So he's looking at the backside of his career, but I mean, he's no older than when Larry Foote was returning. So Larry Foote, one of those guys, and then you also had Antoine Randall L. and a whole bunch of different stuff. So there's a whole bunch of things going on too in free agency. Just wrapping up a few other things with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They went out and they kept Fitzgerald Toussaint for another season, and they've also tendered Anthony Chickalo. He's got an original round tender, I think, of 6th round and a 2nd rounder on Chris Boswell to keep those guys in-house. They, however, did not do anything with Eli Rogers. And there's been some brewing as to whether or not the Rams still haven't cut ties with Tavon Austin. I'm hearing they want to do like a trade. Maybe that's something the Steelers they may shake the bushes and see what they could get there. I don't know. That's just kind of speculative at this point, but seeing as Eli was an undrafted free agent and also having the, I think, MCL. Was it an MCL?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think it was the ACL. I think it was the MCL injury in that playoff game. He's got a path to recovery now, so I don't know that I don't know that you put a tender on him or whatnot. It's probably not going to be too difficult for the Steelers to keep him in-house. Now, looking around and across all the blogosphere, I'm looking around social media, the Twitter and everything else, and let me tell you, my phone nearly died over the last few days. Hard to keep track of all of these moves, but it all began really last Friday. We want to kind of discuss what it means, maybe winning free agency and whether that means you'll win any games, and you can look no further than a team that would be happy with at least one win in the Cleveland Browns and their new GM, Ken Dorsey, I think is his name. He used to be a GM, I believe, with Kansas City, and it seems like he is, he's wheeling and dealing out there now. He's not doing the almost $84 million guaranteed contract for Kirk Cousins. I'm just going to leave that alone. I don't even want to touch that. He's not going out and blowing a lot of money on Sammy Watkins or even Sam Bradford maybe floating around there too. You know what's kind of funny, just to mention that, was somebody had tweeted something about how much people have spent on Sammy Watkins as in regard to trading up when the Bills traded in to get him and acquire him, and then how he was traded over to the Rams and what that all took, and now all the money that's been spent with Sammy Watkins. I said Sam Bradford. What did I tab him at yesterday? 113 million or 116 million he's made in the NFL. He's only played, I think he's been in the league 8 years and only played 2 16-game seasons. He completely missed one in the better part of last year. He started for the Vikings in week 1, and then his mysterious injury just kept him out almost the entire season, which led way to Case Keenum. It's mind-blowing to me just seeing some of the money some of these players are pulling down, and that's more to the power of Lev Bell. But the Cleveland Browns making a lot of moves. It started last Friday. They traded for Jarvis Landry with the Miami Dolphins. Then I'm trying to think. Who else did they go out? They grabbed Tyrod Taylor from the Buffalo Bills, which, as of today, Hugh Jackson announced that he's the starting quarterback already. There'll be no quarterback competition. That's what Hugh Jackson says this. Mark the date down. It's March 14th, I think. It's March 15th. See, I'm already behind. I don't know what day it is. Mark this down, March 15th. Hugh Jackson will not have a job on March 15th, 2019, because he's saying this now, and he's going to end up having to go back on his word. I feel bad because I do think that Cleveland, they have solid coordinators. Obviously, Todd Haley. I think a fresh start for him might be a good thing. I think Greg Williams is a good defensive coordinator. I think some of the moves that they are making are smart. They signed Carlos Hyde. They signed Chris Hubbard from us. But it's like 2 steps forward and then 1 step back, because when I was looking at this Browns team, and then I'm like, wow, they just added Chris Hubbard. They added Carlos Hyde. I'm like, they got a guy in the backfield. They could still draft Saquon Barkley. They got Tyrod Taylor. Maybe not a great quarterback, but somebody who's at least a veteran there. They drafted Njoku at tight end last year. I believe they may have signed, were they the ones that took Darren Fells? They signed somebody that was a blocking tight end too, I think. I think it was Darren Fells. Darren Fells, 3-year, $12 million. And that's like the same cost as Vance McDonald this year, $4 million base. That's just insane. It's amazing how many people make more money than Vance McDonald, and people thought we were going to cut him. I think Vance McDonald's, his future's bright in Pittsburgh. But like Chris Hubbard, they got J.C. Treader, they got the one guy from the Bengals. I think it was Kevin Zeitler. The offensive line's looking better. They got somebody in the backfield that's a workhorse when he's healthy. Carlos Hyde, we like him. OH, and then you got Coleman, Josh Gordon, and then you had Jarvis Landry. And I'm like, man, I don't like what's going on there, because I thought their defense was halfway solid. They got they got a corner from the Packers, and they're making all these moves, and then they still have oodles of draft picks. And then Joe Thomas goes and retires, and I'm like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Winning free agency on paper, to me, doesn't mean a thing. You've got the Browns that got all this money, they got all these draft picks, winning the offseason, and they're going to go and do all this, and does that mean they're even a playoff contender? And then you got people who are like, well, the Steelers, they don't do anything. They need to go do something. They need to sign somebody. But they also want you to sign your own players. It's got to be one or the other. You can't really do both. Steelers competitive, Browns not. I don't know what I see with this Browns team, and just what I said about Tyrod Taylor and Hugh Jackson making this proclamation now in March, before they haven't even had like any type of organized off-season training or workouts, and he's already announced this. I think he has just lit the fire he's sitting in a pot, and the water's going to start to boil. He is definitely already on the hot seat. He's won 1 game in 2 years. And now he's already making decisions, putting the cart in front of the horse, shooting before he aims. He still hasn't jumped in the lake. I think Joe Thomas was smart to get out of Dodge and end what will be a Hall of Fame career now. All respect and kudos to Joe Thomas. But, wow, the Cleveland Browns, I don't know what to make of all these moves.
Well, it is kind of hard to determine. I liked the Jarvis Landry trade for them. It gave them a viable weapon. So I liked them picking him up. I actually like the trade for Tyrod Taylor. From Buffalo's standpoint, it's a steal.
Oh, absolutely.
Because to get the number first pick in the third round, that's absurd for Tyrod Taylor. But from the standpoint of the Browns, you have a guy who at least has shown he can do it in the NFL. He can play. He's not. Is he elite? No, but he's capable. And they haven't had a capable starter at quarterback in I don't know how long. So I like both of those moves. And as you said, that's 2 steps forward. And while we don't want the Browns to make any steps forward, unless you're Zach Meckler, who really would like them to be competitive because he thinks it's fun, boo, Zach, sorry, wrong. I'm much happier when everybody else in the division stinks.
Especially, for all the years I had to deal with torment. And I still listen to these Browns fans. They sound so, my wife and my best friend and talking about all these things, I do not care. This is the only time of year you get excited. So I let you have your excitement. And then I have my fun in September, October, November, December, January, and hopefully February this year too. So, or in 2019 when the Super Bowl is actually played.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. They're making some moves, and somebody, I don't know who said it on Twitter, they were repeating some inside source or somebody, and they said, that doesn't leave Cleveland out of the running for a Barkley or a quarterback. If I were them, I'd grab them too. And I said, you know what? That's what I would do as well. They had they got like 2 first rounders. They may move back into the first round too, just like last year. And I think they have 3 in the second round. They have maybe again 5 of the top 60 picks. I don't want to repeat last year's statistics, but they're almost identical. I mean, they had the top pick before too. So just eventually with all these top picks and high picks, something's gotta work out for this team, you have to think. I don't want to see them competitive either, and some of these moves they're making, I go, uh-oh. But then there's another part of me that says, well, these are the same old Browns. But then another part of me says, hey, seeing the moves they're making and what they're paying for some of these guys and how they're structuring some of this. I mean, 3 years, $15 million for Carlos Hyde. This general manager may have his head on straight. I mean, you got Hyde, you got Duke Johnson back there. Like I said, Gordon, Landry, Coleman, and Njoku. If you get somebody who could throw the ball, who I don't think is Tyrod Taylor, by the way, this team could represent, or Tyrod Taylor's going to flop. They're going to take another quarterback that flops, and they'll still be wallowing in their misery there as the mistake on the lake.
Yeah, it's still so early in the process to say, and the moves that they're making are, as you said, I mean, the signing of Carlos Hyde, and here's my IO for your OH, is a nice pickup, because what I think it does is, if they're sold on a quarterback at 1, right, and they don't want to take Saquon Barkley at 1, but they're sold on a quarterback, and they thought they maybe were going to get Saquon Barkley at 4 if he managed to last that long. Well, now they're protected if he's gone. They can still take him if he's there, but that's the way I looked at this when they signed Hyde. He's a capable starting running back in the NFL. He's had injury issues. I don't know that how much tread he has left on his tires, but at least he's serviceable. They had whoever else they had. I can't remember who was the back Duke Johnson, you said.
Yeah.
So, Duke Johnson. So, they have a stable right now. And as Philly proved, you don't need an elite running back to win as long as you've got a stable of quality running backs. So I think it's a good move. It protects them, but it is going to boil down to whether they can finally find the guy to run this whole thing. And I agree. Tyrod Taylor's not that guy. He's capable. He's somebody that can be a bridge to the guy that you draft if the guy you draft actually pans out. And that's where it's going to really come down to. If it feels like over the last few years they have been afraid to pull the trigger at the top level of the draft on a quarterback. They keep trading back, or they take Myles Garrett. That's a safe bet. And then they trade back. And when did they take Deshaun Kaiser? In the second round, I think.
Yeah, he was a second rounder.
Yeah. So, it seems like they know they need a quarterback, but they're just not, they just can't quite, put the pen to paper in the first round and make it happen. And so if they're not sold on any of these guys as being that franchise guy for them, they're in that same boat again. But until they get a quarterback that can lead their offense, they may improve. And I just based on the moves they've got made and their defense growing a little bit more and Myles Garrett getting better, I would expect them to win a game at least next year.
Yeah,
but they're not going to go to the promised land. They're not going to make it into the playoffs. They're not going to be a contender until they have a quarterback.
That's any team anywhere, and that was the conversation we were having with Miss Terry Flesher. Lovely Terry. Terry she is a Kirk Cousins hater through and through, and cannot understand why some of these quarterbacks are why he would command such a high dollar. And it's not because he's going to light the world on fire. It's because he is probably, even at his mediocre season that he's had last year, and not very much incredible success. I put their numbers. He's played the same amount of games as Blake Bortles, believe it or not, in the regular season. And their numbers, Cousins has the better completion percentage. He has a few more touchdowns and a few less interceptions, aside from the fact that Bortles has never thrown a 400-yard passing game either. However, these guys don't usually hit the free agent market. And looking at what Cousins has had in flashes, there hasn't been anybody that prominent to hit the free agent market in ages, and teams are going to go and snap them up. And now one of the things was, it's like, well, they had Bradford. He can't stay healthy. Teddy Bridgewater, who hasn't been healthy. I don't know that you could count on him. And then Case Keenum, well, he had a good year, but his OC's out with the Vikings. And is that the same Case Keenum that returns in 2018? So I think at least Kirk Cousins is the floor of a Case Keenum with higher upside. Man, $84 million. I mean, these guys just keep trumping each other. And speaking of second rounders, I mean, the Browns passed on getting Derek Carr, too, among other names, and they couldn't get a trade done for Jimmy G. They bypassed. They were going to. This is the one that really puzzles me. They were going to trade for A.J. McCarron, screwed up the paperwork at the trade deadline last year, and then didn't even make an attempt to sign him here, and he's on his way to Buffalo. So, which is fitting because of the whole Andy Dalton and all the Bills Mafia donating to Andy Dalton's thing. It's kind of ironic there. But, yeah, in summation, I don't know. The Browns, new look Browns, it's always the new look Browns. I thought they were going to be a problem when they got Brandon Wheaton and Trent Richardson. I can never tell what exactly is going to go on with their team. I thought Jabril Peppers and Myles Garrett, and they didn't even win a game last year. I mean, that's just you know how pathetic you got to be? I'm not even saying this to joke, really. I mean, it comes off funny, but it's also, it's sad. My heart goes out to those players. I don't know how you suit up every week when you're 0-10 already. How do you get through the next 6 or 7 weeks if the bye landed after that? I mean, I really feel, and in the same way, I try not to talk smack because, you know what? When Ben retires, the Steelers could easily be in the same boat, going over the waterfall there and into their demise. So we know what the dark ages were like. I know everybody wants the Steelers to take that quarterback that could be Andrew Luck or Aaron Rodgers, and that stuff just doesn't really happen. That's a topic for another day. But I do like the Browns worry me a little bit. I do like seeing that the Bengals really haven't done a whole lot either, and the Baltimore Ravens are so hamstrung with that. Once again, big quarterback contract of Joe Flacco. They have no wide receivers on the roster, and pretty much they're still in rebuild mode. So I'm feeling pretty good at where the Steelers are. Don't sweat it if they don't make any major flashy moves. They got a few gaps that they got to fill here. Maybe bring Chickalo back, make a decision on Bud Dupree on a 5th-year option. Arthur Moats is a free agent. They still have TJ. So, I mean, their starters are still in place on the outside linebacker position for this season. Not much depth there. Absolutely nothing when it comes to safeties. And for once, we're not talking about corners. So this is a good thing. Offense, they don't have a whole lot that they have needs there as well. So this is good going forward. I feel happy for Chris Hubbard getting paid 5 years, $37.5 million by the Cleveland Browns. 18 of that guaranteed. Awesome for a guy that went undrafted. Kudos to him. Hate seeing him in a division rival's uniform, but I'm totally fine with it. And moving forward, hopefully we have some more to talk about with the Steelers, see if they make any moves over the weekend.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they're going to make moves. It'll be this weekend or it'll be next week. That's when they decide to. They never come out in that first week of free agency and do anything. They wait for the dust to settle. They figure out who can help them the best and fits the budget that they have. And, you know, as you said many times in this podcast, for people who are clamoring, oh, they have to make a splash move. Well, you know, sometimes you can clamor all you want. When they don't have the money to do it, they can't do it. You cannot invent cap space. And who are you going to cut, you know, beyond who they've already cut so that you can make these moves? You know, it just doesn't happen that way. The Steelers have never operated that way, and it's not going to start now. But I would expect them to do something in the next 7 to 10 days.
Yeah, absolutely. There's too many spaces on that roster. When I said negative before, I didn't mean negative as in terms of player. I just meant addition and subtraction. You know, a negative roster move, meaning -1, -2, -3. We've got some depth charts to fill out. So interesting to see going forward. Once again, Brian, always good to be talking Steelers football and some AFC North football today with you.
It's very nice to see you again, Joseph.
Oh, thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you very much for your pie on Pie Day as well. And that's a good place to let everyone off with a nice chuckle. My name's Joe. His name is Brian or Mrs. Roach. Until next time, be safe, be good. We'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.